Well, hello everyone. I hope you're having a great day today. Welcome to Monday's edition of Take 5. We had a great day in the house of the Lord. Yesterday, man, if you missed yesterday's morning service, it was great. We enjoyed so much these times that we get to come together and worship. If you were not here yesterday, you ought to make plans to be with us the very next time we meet. Now, hey, I know it's Labor Day and I know you're busy. And I know you got all kind of things going on, barbecuing and all this kind of stuff with friends and family. But let's take just a minute to talk about what we talked about yesterday. The title of the message yesterday was in the form of a question. It's simply this: God, is that you? And the reason I've titled it this, and the reason we're talking about this, is because I think it's very imperative in the time that we live that we need to learn to distinguish the voice of God above all other voices and all the other influences that are out there, because everything in the world is competing for our attention. And we need to be able to distinguish God's voice from all others. It needs to be familiar, and that's exactly what He wants it to be. I want to pull one verse from Revelation 3:20, where Jesus is talking to the church at Laodicea. He says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock." Now here's the part. "If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him, and he with me." Behold, I stand at the door and knock. He's knocking. But then he says, if anybody hears my voice and opens the door, then he'll come in and eat with him, and we with he. There's a couple of things that we need to recognize out of this. Number one, there are all kind of things knocking on our door. Now, before the days of peepholes and ring doorbells, when somebody would knock on the door, we would have to say, "Who is it?" And we would do that real loud. And then a lot of times, if it was the person we know, they would just say, "It's me." They wouldn't even say their name, but we know. We recognize the voice because we were familiar. We'd go to the door and open it. And we didn't recognize the voice, hey, we might not even open the door according to, who it was and what they were doing outside there. And so Jesus says, "I stand at the door and knock, but you need to recognize my voice." And so He is standing in every area of our life and He is knocking. And when we say, "Who is it?" He's saying, "It is me." And we need to recognize that voice. Because what He is wanting and longing in that first verse when we read it there, what He's wanting is reciprocating fellowship and communication with His people. Notice what He said: "I'll come in and eat with him and he with me." He wants that reciprocation. He wants that fellowship. He wants that intimacy. He wants that communication. He wants that familiarity. That's what He's after. He doesn't just want to visit either. He wants to dwell. He said, "I will come into him." And that phrase means I will come in and dwell with him. I will be there. I will set up my abode. So our desire should be that as we become familiar with the voice of God, our desire should be that He come and dwell with us. We don't need any more, divine visitations. We don't need that. What we need is a holy habitation. We need God to come in and dwell with us. Go in the bedroom, unpack His suitcase, throw it in the closet, come out, sit down on the couch, get the remote, start flipping through the channels. We want Him to live with us. We want Him to dwell with us. And that's why I tell you that it's so important that you understand you need a daily relationship with Jesus Christ, not just a weekend visitation. You need to walk with Him and talk with Him and hear from Him on a daily basis. In some form or the other, you need that daily communication with the Lord. And that's what He wants. That's what He's knocking on our hearts and desiring to get. The thing is we've got to learn to recognize His voice, because He said there are two things that is contingent upon this: if we hear His voice and if we open the door. And so there are people that have heard the voice, but they've yet to open the door and let Him in. So all of this has got to work out together. But first and foremost, and our train of thought for this week, is the familiarity that comes from recognizing His voice. That's the part that we've got to focus in on, is that familiarity. If we do not get familiar with His voice so that we can identify who's at the door, we will go on all of our lives opening doors to things that we should never let in. That's right. We need to let God in, but there's some things out there that's knocking on our door that we need to recognize what it is, and we do not need to let it in. Some of it is sin knocking and temptation knocking, and some of it is opportunity that's knocking. And someone would say, well, why don't you open the door for opportunity? Well, I don't need ever opportunity. I need the opportunity God has for me, you see. So that's the important thing. We need to identify who's at the door and make sure we let the right person and the right thing in our life. This idea of familiarity, this is something that plays throughout the Bible, and we're going to talk about that a little more detailed the rest of the week. Today, as we close, let me encourage you for this one thing. All those things that are knocking, trying to get your attention, trying to get in your life, you need to learn who's at the door. You need to begin by asking the question, God, is that you? And if you will seek, and if you will seek to discern who's there, God will reveal himself to you, and you can get familiar with his voice. You can get so familiar with the voice of the Lord that you can hear it amongst 10,000 other voices. You can hear it just like the favorite person that you talk to on the phone, that you don't even have to ask who it is. When you hear that voice in a crowd, you know, that's my cousin, that's my friend, that's my wife, that's my son, that's my daughter. You recognize it because you're familiar. That's what God wants us to do with him. He wants us to be so familiar that in the midst of all of these other voices, we hear his and we open up and we let him in. Hey, it's been good being with you today. I look forward to being with you tomorrow on Tuesday's edition of Take 5. Till then, God bless you. Have a great day. Hey, trust the Lord, my friend. He will never fail you.